We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam.
So,
who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL Podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson, previewing Week 8 of the NFL action. But before we get into it, special thanks to our friends over at Monkey Knife Fight. You got to get over there right now because all first-time depositors at Monkey Knife Fight that put at least $20 into their account while using the promo code PFF will receive a free PFF Edge annual subscription. That's right, $40 of value for just $20, plus you get the opportunity to turn that $20 into even more money playing daily fantasy and prop games at one of the fastest-growing fantasy sports sites in the country. It's Monkey Knife Fight. This is a no-brainer. Just get to Monkey Knife Fight right now. Deposit your $20 with promo code PFF today, and you receive a free PFF Edge annual subscription. The PFF NFL Podcast is also brought to you by PristineAuction.com. Check out their daily auctions with $1 starting bids on over 8,000 football items. They're all up for auction. Signed helmets, balls, jerseys, and much more. Pristine Auction guarantees authenticity on every product. Use that promo code PFF for $10 off your first invoice. Sam, we got a great show. It's the best show we've had since Monday.
yeah, true. You sound very excited today.
I'm fired up. It's
Okay.
just great. It's a mid-season random boost of energy. We're supposed to be, getting tired. No,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
ready to
not
go.
you.
Because we got Kevin Clark from The Ringer
Yes.
on the podcast today. Unfortunately, he brought up rugby. It was at the end, but he brought up rugby. We're trying to avoid
I
rugby.
think I might have brought it up.
No, maybe.
I mean, he embraced it.
He did. It was a good discussion, though. We talked a little bit of football. We talked about Kevin Clark's in general. There was a lot of good stuff. So that's at the end.
Revlon, mustaches.
Revlon,
really
the
hit
Revlon
everything.
example that he gave was really good
Yeah.
in describing the Antonio Brown signing for the Tampa Bay Bucks. So check that out at the end. But first, listen to us. That's the thing. Don't fast forward to the interview.
God, no.
The important stuff is right now. Previewing Week 8, starting with the Thursday night game. We got the Falcons and the Panthers. I'm calling this the battle of the over versus underachievers.
Okay.
The Panthers roster should not be...
Doesn't feel like catchy.
Well, it's just what it is. It's not catchy. It's just descriptive.
Okay.
More than anything.
Maybe
Falcons,
that's why you're
underachieving.
bad at naming things.
Big-time throws and turnover-worthy throws are hot right now. Just saying. Social team loves them. They're hot. Name those. Over versus underachievers. Falcons versus Panthers. Discuss.
Oh, okay.
How's that?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's great. I'm curious, are the Falcons going to find another creative way to lose a game? Because they're really
sure hope so. On
They're going
national
through the
TV.
spectrum at this point.
Yeah.
Like they're finding some pretty weird ways.
To sum up last Sunday,
Yeah.
the way that they lost was Todd Gurley accidentally scored a touchdown
Yes, literally.
when he wasn't
accidentally
supposed
scored.
to, giving the Lions their 2% chance of coming back to win.
They released the audio and they were specifically telling him in the huddle, do not score. He's like, yeah, I got you. I know. Now, I think the audio was from the play before, not that exact play. But the point is, they were acutely aware. Whatever you do, don't get in the end zone because that gives them the ball back.
Is this like the DB intercepting the deep fourth down pass when he should knock it down? And it's look, nobody's at the end of the year, it's an interception.
So,
at the end of the year, it's a touchdown. It's going to show up.
Well, so the thing is, Todd Gurley apparently has a bonus tied to touchdowns.
Oh, really?
Yes. Now, when you look at what actually happened, he's fighting through a tackle of a guy who then lets him go and drops off, right? And that kind of, you're dragging 200 pounds and suddenly 200 pounds isn't on you anymore, so you fall forward. So I think that's what happened and why he went like a yard further than he wanted to.
It took a couple steps to realize it, though.
Well, on the other hand, why are you fighting through that tackle? Like, just go down.
Yeah.
You don't need to drag that guy any further.
From the 2 instead of the 5.
Right. Like, I don't understand why you're fighting through the contact in the first place that it then suddenly disappears and you stumble forward because it's gone.
And even after that, the Falcons still managed to give up a 29-yard laser for Matthew Stafford to Kenny Golladay, and then a walk-off touchdown from the Lions, essentially on a busted coverage. So yeah, it was very creative in the Falcons' pantheon of losing. But all that said, the Falcons should be much better with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley and everything that they have offensively. What are they going to do defensively against a pretty good Carolina offense, the way they're spreading the ball around?
Yeah.
With no Christian McCaffrey, by the way.
Right. I think the Panthers are the interesting team in this because they have been overachieving so much, because we thought that talent-wise this was one of the worst rosters in the NFL, and they're clearly way better than that. I think it's fun to see them, in prime time in a nationally televised game, and everyone gets to have a look at what exactly is going on with Carolina right now. To me, they're the most interesting team here. The Falcons are the same team the Falcons have been for years, and that's why they fired everybody in the building and are rebuilding.
We have breaking news from the Carolina Panthers Twitter account.
Okay. Panthers
are back in black tonight. They're going to be wearing black uniforms.
Huh.
That's important. Some of you have already seen this. I hope it was a great game, but I'll be looking for I'm looking for the Panthers in that youth movement on the defensive side of the ball. Derek Brown, Jeremy Chin. They actually, on paper, should have had one of the worst cornerback groups in the NFL, but Corn Elder, Rasul Douglas, Dante Jackson, all playing pretty good football for the Panthers against a tough slate of offenses.
Yeah.
So Matt Rule doing the job he's doing with what looks like a subpar roster, I think is encouraging for the Panthers moving forward. So
I'm just rooting for a funny way of losing.
Oh, man. So much hate for the poor Falcons. Let's get into the best games of the week. Let's start in the AFC Central North. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are favored by 3.5 against the undefeated Steelers. Everybody puts out their power rankings every week, and everybody has to put the Steelers at number 1. They feel obligated to put the Steelers at number 1.
Only undefeated team, Steve.
So they have to be number 1. But Vegas disagrees. It is in Baltimore, but 3.5 point spread as of right now for the Ravens. What are you looking for in this one?
The defenses. So I kind of get why the Ravens are favored. I think it might.
Me too.
Why is your reason?
They're awesome other than games against the Chiefs.
Okay. That's not the reason
they're just
I'm
a more
with.
dominant all-around team, I think.
They're also coming off a bye, and they're a good coaching team and a good team coming off a bye, whereas the Steelers had a tough go of it last week against Tennessee. That makes sense. That makes a difference, even if home field doesn't necessarily make a difference anymore. Also, the PFF's power ratings, which if you go to Greenline, if you have that, the sort of betting resource, go to the power ratings, that pulls it leverages all of our ELO stuff and our data to basically tell you how much better each team is than the next on a neutral field, all things considered, right? And we have the Ravens actually as 2.5, almost 3 point better than the Steelers. So it does make sense that they're favored. On the other hand, this Steelers defense, which is the thing I'm coming back to every single week, is just murderous towards opposing offenses. Now, the Titans, I think, did a really good job of eventually righting that and getting away from it and being able to hurt them late on. I'm really intrigued to see. Baltimore's unique, right? They have Lamar Jackson. Nobody else has a Lamar Jackson. Therefore, it's a completely different prospect to try and stop this team as it is anybody else. So does Lamar give them a unique way of fighting back against this defense, or are the things that Pittsburgh are doing right now, which is basically throwing bodies at the line of scrimmage, regardless of whether it's run or pass, are they actually the things you need to do to shut down Lamar Jackson in 2020?
Yeah, so I want to take back a little bit about what I said. I don't think the Ravens are they're not a better all-around team necessarily than the Steelers. The Steelers, I think, when you just kind of go like unit by unit, might be as well-rounded as any team in the league. There's no major weaknesses there other than the secondary, which has been good the last couple weeks, hasn't been, up to par, what they've expected. I think the interesting part of this is what you're saying, though, right? When you go up against the Steelers, I'll say the same thing I said last week. Should the Titans have made this a Ryan Tannehill game? On paper, you don't want to go 7-on-7 in the trenches and try to run the ball. Well, the Ravens want to run the ball, right? But when the Ravens run, it's not 7-on-7 or 8-on-8. It's Lamar changing the math and changing everything, right? So that's what makes it fascinating. The Ravens don't need to beat up the Steelers' defensive front from a blocking standpoint. They just have to make them wrong. That's where Lamar comes in. So I do expect more keepers, so to speak, more Lamar-driven run game. But that's one of the biggest stories of the year for the Ravens. They haven't run the ball the same way as they did last year.
And I wonder if they've been specifically protecting him for this game, right? It's like Lamar is nursing an injury. Let's limit how much we ask him to do, because in a couple of weeks' time on the horizon is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we're going to need him in that game. Like, we're not going to need him against Cincinnati. We're not going to need him necessarily before that. But when Pittsburgh are there, he actually matters in terms of this game. Particularly because when you look at like the biggest mismatches up front, the Steelers' interior guys, who we talked about before, they're really good at making sure they're one-on-one all game long. Cameron Hayward, Stephon Tuitt. You're not getting double
Tyson
teams.
Alu.
Yeah. You're not getting double teams on those guys because of the blitzes they send, right? So they're one-on-one against those interior Ravens offensive linemen who we've talked about before are now a weakness because they're not Marshall Yanda. So suddenly there's an already apparent mismatch. You're probably not going to have the success you want running the ball up the middle with Ingram or Gus Edwards or whoever. That space is going to be missing. So you're going to need Lamar Jackson to be taking the ball on the keeper around the perimeter and hope you can win there.
To back up your point real quick, top 5 graded interior defensive lineman with at least 150 snaps. Tyson Alu, second in the NFL for the Steelers. Stephon Tuitt's 4th, Cameron Hayward 5th. They have 3 of the 5 interior defensive linemen in the NFL right now. That's impressive.
Yeah. So as I say, they've got a mismatch there. The Ravens' mismatch might be with Lamar, but if you're just blitzing, if you're sending bodies at him all day long, that might take away that. You might bottle up those lanes. The really intriguing thing is teams seem to have almost reverted back to the Miami game plan from week 1 of 2019 that was such a complete train wreck, right? I don't trust you to be able to pass the ball over our heads, so we're going to just send bodies at you in terms of Lamar and the Ravens. He hasn't been as good this year at doing that. The stuff we talked about, the 8% touchdown rate was absurd. It was unsustainable. It's going to come back to earth, and it has. And teams almost seem to have like crept back towards that game plan. It's like, all right, we got a little bit ahead of ourselves last year. That was too much, and it turns out he could punish us. But right now, he's not in that same groove, so that kind of is the way to stop him, or at least slow him down.
Plus, the Dolphins didn't have the horses, really, to pull it off. Now, Minkah Fitzpatrick was a part of that Dolphins team, but they had him like one-on-one with Marquise Brown, and that was, 83 yards later, not great. I will say, again, the Steelers have the pieces to slow down the Ravens. So, and the fact that the Ravens haven't been as dominant this year, does make this, it's going to be a great matchup. It's really a good one. I can't wait to see if, to your point, the Ravens have kind of been setting this up. And I do think we see Lamar carrying 10 to 15 times in this one. They have to rely on him more than they've had to against some of the worst teams in the NFL over the last few weeks when they've been playing.
And the other thing is, it's 2020, right? So even if like defenses just don't hold up over a game, it doesn't happen anymore. It's too hard. So the Steelers might have, this is what happened against the Titans. The Steelers had the defense to stuff up that Titans offense, but eventually it got them with a few big plays. The Ravens, the same thing, right? You might do a really good job for like 3 quarters, but it only takes a couple of plays, and it's Marquise Brown for 75, and it's Lamar getting into open field for another 70, and suddenly it's a 14-point swing, and it looked like you had a crappy day on defense. You know what I mean?
I get it. I think this is really intriguing for the Steelers right now. They're 6-0. You can look back at their schedule and say, who did they beat that was good? The first team was the Titans. Good win against a good Titans team. But they beat up the Giants, the Broncos, Texans, Eagles, Browns are good, but they crushed them. So the last few weeks, they've beaten teams with good records. If they get past the Ravens right now, go to 7-0. Cowboys, Bengals, Jaguars are next before they meet the Ravens again in late November. We could be looking at a 10-0 Steelers team hosting the Ravens on November 26th.
For the Steelers, to an extent, this game is almost house money. Like, all they want is to split the series with the Ravens at this point, right? They already have a lead in the division. They're undefeated, the only undefeated team. In terms of seeding, if they can get out of this season having split the series with the Ravens, they're in great shape. And this is the away game, right? So it's like a shot to nothing. We take a swing at it here. We don't get it. Okay, we get to bring them back to Heinz Field and take another shot at it later on. So I'm kind of curious to see if they do just go, guns out, guns blazing, and see if they can pull off something crazy, knowing that they have like a second shot at this in a few weeks' time, with the one that really matters.
So what about the other side of the ball? Big Ben playing a more conservative brand of football, spreading the ball around to a pretty good group of playmakers when they're all on the field healthy. Deontay Johnson, Juju, the emergence of Chase Claypool, who was kind of non-existent last week against the Titans, going up against that Ravens secondary. That matches up pretty well. Marlon Humphrey's their highest-rated player. He's one of the best corners in the NFL. Jimmy Smith still playing ball. You texted me the other day, like, he's been around since 2011. I feel like I've had him as like a bounce-back candidate for 8 straight years now.
Yeah.
But he's playing pretty well. I mean, the Ravens have the corners to slow down the Steelers.
They do. And Marlon Humphrey, I think, is honestly one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Just doesn't get the credit because of what he's asked to do in that defense. Here's the thing, right? So Ben Roethlisberger has turned into this more, again, I don't like using the term game manager because it's become this pejorative for quarterbacks, but facilitator within the offense.
That's
right?
good, yeah.
His job is to just get the ball to all these playmakers and not be a reason that there's problems.
Get the ball quickly.
Yes. Right? Now, that is actually the critical point here that I'm making, right? Get the ball out of your hands fast. Get it in the hands of these guys, right? But where the Ravens are really good on defense is not just that they blitz you like crazy. These are the number 1 and number 2 blitz teams in the NFL, right? The Ravens and the Steelers. So they're going to blitz you a lot. But what they do on the back end is they work out, okay, if I send this blitz and you read it, where do you want to go with the ball, right? What is your hot read off this?
Right.
And that's what they attack, right? They are really good at sending a guy into the space that you want to attack off the back of this blitz. So the Steelers' offense, in one way, looks perfect for this defense, right? We get the ball out of our hands fast. We're not asking him to hold on for an age and get sacked. We're going to shoot all these quick spaces. On the other hand, that's what they want you to do. So this is a great chess battle between who wins that, right? Do the Steelers win by having different hot reads to the ones the Ravens anticipate them having, or do the Ravens essentially manage to drop a guy into every hot route the Steelers want to run and end up with like 3 Roethlisberger picks on the day of him trying to avoid the blitz getting it out quickly?
There's one other factor here. Yannick Ngakoue. Ravens traded for him last week during the bye. And we mentioned the Ravens blitz here every single week and how they don't really rely on players to win one-on-ones. And last year, they definitely didn't have the horses to do it.
Right.
But now, Calais Campbell's there. You bring in Yannick Ngakoue. You have 2 guys, and Judon is still there, and they move him around, and he's, you have 3 legitimate, pretty good pass rushers, 2 better than, Calais Campbell and Yannick Ngakoue you can kind of trust to get after the quarterback. Do they change up their strategy just a little bit? Are they actually going to, what is this breaking news here? Are they actually going to trust their 4-man rush just a little bit with an Ngakoue there and a Calais Campbell, 2 guys that they've brought into the mix over the last year?
I don't think that they'll scale back the blitz because they bring in Ngakoue, because I think their blitz is – I don't think their blitz is a product of not having horses. I think their not having horses is a product of their blitz plan.
Okay.
Right? But what having the horses does, or at least upgrading the horses, is mean that the one-on-one matchups that you scheme by virtue of the blitz are now going to win more often, right? So it's like the Steelers thing. They make sure that you cannot double team Cameron Hayward and Stephon Tuitt. Therefore, those guys win more often because they're one-on-one all the time. If you get Ngakoue one-on-one all the time, he's going to win more than Matthew Judon did, or whoever else would be in that spot. So I think their defense just gets more effective by him being there. I don't think he's going to cause them to dial back on the aggressiveness in terms of how often they blitz.
All right, so Ravens by 3.5. As usual here, we talk through it, and I'm like, man, I thought I liked the Ravens. Now I kind of like the Steelers in this one.
Good. Do that, because I want to go the other way.
All right, I'll take Pittsburgh. I don't feel great about it, though.
I don't love the spread. I don't like the fact that it's 3.5 by what we're seeing. On the other hand, I can kind of see why it is, and I think the matchups are good.
3.5 is massive for any of these AFC North. The Steelers and Ravens, no matter who they have personnel-wise, always seem to play those close games anyway, but I guess I'll take Pitt. Let's go to another division battle. San Francisco 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks by 2.5 as of right now. Unfortunately, the Niners are without Deebo Samuel, as they were just getting back to full speed, and you watch Deebo and Brandon Ayuk and the way those guys are being used in space, you're like, all right, Niners offense starting to look a little bit like last year. Garoppolo distributing, facilitating, another facilitator there.
We're going to need a new word for that as well.
Yeah, we will.
We can get a thesaurus.
So next time we want to say the same word that you've already said, we just pull up the
We
thesaurus.
don't even have the helmet. Look, you bring Austin into the booth, and we don't have a helmet set up or anything. This is a train
Can
wreck.
we get our sponsor's helmet out here, please? Oh, you got it, Sam? All right. Finally, the Steve Palazzolo NFL Podcast. Let me tell you about this 49ers. Sam just left, but in the Seahawks matchup. Russell Wilson coming off a game with 3 turnovers, 2 of which were certainly his fault and disastrous. And, going back home, does Seattle, here's my big question with Seattle and Brian Schottenheimer and Pete Carroll. Were the turnovers enough to pull Russ out of the kitchen?
Right. I've been kind of saying, this was my point on the Mina podcast, right? We were on Mina's show, and the question was basically, what is wrong with all of the best teams in the NFL? It's perfect for me, right? The negative aspect of all this.
Great. It was a great show.
Right.
An hour of negativity from Sam.
So my thing with the Seahawks is, at some point they are just itching to go conservative again.
See, I told you he's going to turn it over if he has to throw it 50 times.
You don't erase that many years of being that conservative with like one off season of, we're just going to let Russ air it out, see what happens. No, it doesn't happen. Somewhere in the back of their brains, they're just waiting for the trigger to go back to like ultra conservative, pound the football, don't let Russ make a mistake. That's crazy talk. And that could be it. I think it's going to happen in the playoffs sometime where you meet good teams and it's like, I don't know if we want to be letting him pass 30 times against
December
the Bucs.
and January football's one on the ground
against the Bucs in the postseason. Look at that defense. But that could be it, right? I don't know, Russ made a few mistakes against Arizona. Maybe we dial it back a little bit.
I don't think that they do, but I could see it. It's a division matchup. It's a division matchup against a team that does like to run the ball. And, is their takeaway? Look, this is where we've criticized teams in the past, is when things go wrong, they might not fully be able to they don't fully realize why it went wrong. They might look at the wrong things, right? If Seattle looks at that game and they're like, you know what? Things went wrong because Wilson threw the ball 50 times and there were turnovers that were bad. What are you smirking at, man?
I'm not smirking. This is my default face.
What's happened here? Anyway, do they go back and say the turnovers are why we lost? Instead of saying Russell Wilson played an outstanding game for 95% of it, but that 5% is what cost us the game, and we can't have that.
The turnovers were why they lost. It would be true. The question is,
but the overall body of work was still far more positive than negative.
But that's
for Russ.
different, right? The question is that a reason to go to a different game plan? It doesn't matter why you lost. That is a reason you lost.
It was.
But the question is, do we therefore change what we want to do off the back of that because it was a mistake? To which the answer is no. Russell Wilson is A, playing out of his mind, and B, by far your best chance to win the game. So don't take it out of his hands just because he made some mistakes, which he did. And they did cost you the game. That's fine. That's going to happen in the NFL. It's a tough league, and mistakes are going to be a problem. So, that's the thing I'm most interested, though, is will they go back to a more conservative game plan? And then obviously the other side of the ball is Kyle Rembrandt Shanahan against the latest defense trying to stop him. Bill Belichick got wrecked by Rembrandt. Can Pete Carroll's defense do any better?
So Seattle, they made a trade this week as well. They bring in an edge defender of their own, Carlos Dunlap.
Have you bid on his house yet?
I have not. That was great. So Dunlap, who lives here in Cincinnati, obviously, former Bengal, right after the game on Sunday, tweets out that his house is for sale.
It sounded very nice.
It did sound.
Did you?
He only has 4 bedrooms though.
But it's like a 6,000 square foot house. Think how big that makes the bedrooms.
I need bedrooms though.
You do. Well, on the other hand, if they're huge, bunk beds.
Yeah, the kids don't sleep well when they're in the I'll consider it.
AJ Hawk was on Pat McAfee's show and was telling him a story about, AJ Hawk was in Cincinnati for however long he was there.
Yeah.
And he was like, I just need to rent like a small apartment for a while, right? And apparently Dunlap back then was trying to sell him that house.
Oh, really?
So he's been trying to shift that for a while.
He's been on his way out.
Might not be a quick sale.
New England media have been tracking Stephon Gilmore's house being for sale.
Oh, yeah?
Which we'll talk about with
Well,
the
they nailed that with the Brady thing.
They did.
Brady's house was for sale. It was no, he's just moving mansions. Don't worry about it.
Reporting in 2020 is just, surfing Zillow and seeing who's getting ready to
it's
trade.
Zillow and Instagram. Did he unfollow somebody on Instagram, and is his house for sale?
Those
are the only two things we need to know.
That's
and
why
also,
Schefter's so good. He's probably got 10 interns checking Insta.
And then the last one is there a private plane in flight somewhere?
Yeah, that's why we're not good reporters. We're not good.
We don't have any of those things.
No Instagram feel. No, not on Zillow enough. Anyway, Carlos Dunlap, Seattle's pass rush is rough when Jamal Adams is not in there. So Dunlap, who has not played well this year for the Bengals, but last year was really good. We talked about him a lot when we were trying to, have some positives about the Bengals last year. Dunlap was like the one.
Yeah.
And I think he'll be rejuvenated up there, and he immediately becomes their best one-on-one pass rusher other than spurts of Benson Mayowa. Yeah, and Jamal Adams.
He's a year removed from a career season.
Right.
Last year was the best year of his career in terms of PFF grade, in terms of PFF pass rushing grade. He had 50-plus total pressures, which is more than anyone on the Seattle defense right now had or has had. It's more than anyone last year had except Jadeveon Clowney. So, yeah, he should be. Now, this season has been anything but that. On the other hand, it's been pretty clear from the outset that, he's not happy there, right? He's wanted out for a while. They benched him. It's been going south for Dunlap here for some time. So I think you can probably not throw it out completely, and maybe you don't expect him to have a career year again, but he's somewhere in the middle, right? He isn't as bad as he's played this year, and he's not as good as he was last season, which is his high watermark. But I agree that he immediately becomes their best pass rusher and probably best edge defender, period, and is a massive upgrade for a team that basically got him for a song. This is the perfect sort of trade deadline approaching trade from a Seattle point of view, right? You hold out, you had a desperate need somewhere, and oh look, there's a disgruntled, pretty good player who suddenly is available for almost nothing. Snag.
I think they were in the market. They were considering a Carlos Dunlap, Aldon Smith, Everson Griffin. So Dunlap should help in the run game for sure. Again, they don't have a pass rusher graded above 65 on their defensive line other than Jonathan Bullard, who only has 41 snaps to his name. So across the board, they're not getting after the QB. And, 16 total pressures for Benson Mayowa on 226 attempts, which is a huge number. That's top 5 in the league, but only 16 pressures. DeMontre Moore, only 11 pressures. They need help up there. So that should help for Seattle just a little bit. I want to see the Niners defense though too. They've played pretty well in recent weeks, and you have Jason Verrett playing pretty well. Just like last week, Tyler Lockett looked like a nice matchup against Drake Kirkpatrick and Patrick Peterson. That matchup's going to be awesome when Verrett and Lockett are matched up against each other. But I think it might be more of a DK Metcalf type of day for Seattle here.
That's going to be interesting because, again, Jason Verrett, as good as he is, falls into the category of how does that human cover a DK Metcalf? Just from a size point of view. You can run with him, sure. But, again, he outweighs you by 40 pounds. How do you deal with that? You can't. There's only so much you can deal with in terms of offsetting size.
A lot of hand slapping.
Yeah, eventually he's just going to beat you up at the catch point and catch the football and swat you aside. It's nothing you can do about it. We saw the kind of physical freak DK is running down Budda Baker. As good as Jason Verrett is, and it's amazing to see him playing this well, given what he's been through. At some point he's going to be one-on-one with DK, and that if I'm Russell Wilson, that's an immediate ball in the air.
Yes, absolutely. I think this will be a good matchup, man. Seattle's got a whole bunch of guys questionable. Jamal Adams still battling injury, has only played 3 games this year. Shaquille Griffin's questionable. Benson Mayowa, who I mentioned earlier, questionable. Dwayne Brown, questionable. This is as of Wednesday, so there's a lot that still can happen.
I just found the flaw in Austin, the camera guys. Be patient on the cameras. Don't switch over too early. But if you cough after you finish talking, you'll still be on the camera shot.
Come on, look.
Look, these are the things that you learn as you're going through your training process.
Listen, sometimes when you're dealing with interns, you have to have patience.
That's true.
So
That's
Austin's essentially,
it was my fault.
A producing intern right now. It's about time Austin did something for this company and, moved us forward by helping out, the top podcast in the company.
Catch him on a 2 for 1 Drafts podcast.
Yeah, 2 for 1 Drafts. Austin. Yeah.
Where he doesn't operate the cameras.
Well, maybe he could. Maybe he could do everything.
Yeah.
Austin Gale, MVP of PFF, is behind the scenes here today. We just wanted to give him a shout out. We appreciate him. All right, so what do you like? Who do you like in this game? Seattle 2.5 at home. Do they bounce back after the weird loss against the Cardinals?
I think they do. I think they will be annoyed at that loss.
Yeah.
Will look to bounce back in a significant way. And
Agreed.
I think they'll do enough against that 49ers offense to slow them down.
I think we'll learn a lot on the first drive. The first drive Seattle had against Arizona. Well, the first drive, Russ, 5 straight passes.
Whether he cooks or not?
Yes.
Okay.
5 straight passes, touchdown, right? That dictated what their strategy was going to be in that game. If they come out and it's run, pass, then maybe they're too conservative. But if they keep the ball in Russ's hands and they trust him, I like Seattle in this one. The other big game this weekend, New Orleans Saints, they travel outdoors to the Chicago Bears. Saints are 4.5-point favorites. Their first outdoor game of the year. Bears offense struggling, but the defense has kept it close. I want to see what the Saints offense does. Rumored 15 to 20 mile an hour winds. Will that actually affect Drew Brees and throwing the ball, or do they throw underneath enough that it doesn't matter?
That's the thing. The great thing is you don't throw the ball far enough for the wind to be a problem.
Yeah.
Unless Drew Brees' arm is so bad that the wind actually affects an 8-yard pass. And I mean 8 yards is in actual travel distance, not 8 yards down the field.
Right.
Just 8 yards from point to point. The other thing is, like, at this point, the only offensive weapon remaining for New Orleans is Kamara. Everybody's hurt or COVID or something, right? Nobody's playing. It's Kamara and the end. I mean,
Michael Thomas hurt again. Still questionable. He's questionable once again. Marquez Callaway, who did have a really nice game last week, he's banged up. Emmanuel
Sanders on the COVID list, I
What's
think. Sanders on the COVID.
Oh, he's on the COVID list.
And is out for 2 games, so this will be the second. I know we've joked that their offense is Kamara. Let's get it to Kamara and let him break tackles, and that's it. It might have to be. There's nobody else. It's him and Jared Cook. The end.
And that becomes, Roquan Smith, the Bears linebacker. He's got to be leading the league and really popping offensive players with the ball, but not actually tackling them. That's been happening the last few weeks. He's absolutely crushing people who are just spinning off him. And that's Kamara's game. Nobody gets a straight shot on Kamara. So this is one of those, you drafted Roquan Smith in the first round for games like this. Take out this back because you're one of the few linebackers that has the athleticism to match up with him. So that'll be a key matchup in this one.
Does it feel like we're also due a non-crappy Nick Foles game?
I don't know if we are.
No?
I think, I don't know. If those 2 great games that he had didn't happen in the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, right? Is Nick Foles closer to Blake Bortles than he is whatever we've been describing him to be? Which we've been describing him as like a Matthew Stafford light. Like a couple times a year you see greatness, but maybe that greatness just happened to have occur in the 2 most important games of the 2017 season.
They definitely did, but even outside of those 2 games, his range of outcomes is way broader than it's been so far. Like the impressive thing now is that every game he's played has been graded in the 60s, except for the last one in the 50s. Like he's actually been bang on rank average.
But this was Jameis the last couple of years. We always talked about Jameis as a roller coaster ride,
right.
But his 4 season grades that we have for him all ended up in the same range.
But it's
a roller coaster ride to the same destination.
But his ended up at the same grade at the end of every season. Foles is grading the same every game, even if within the game it's like he's not having.
Maybe he's due for a dud.
No, the dud was last week.
30.
The dud was the Rams game.
I've seen much worse than that.
Of course, he's capable of worse, but that was a bad game. I'm just saying that so far, where is the good Nick Foles?
I don't know, but the Bears with Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney, who torched Jalen Ramsey for what should have been a 70-yarder, and Foles couldn't get it to him. He's under pressure. Darnell Mooney has been getting open behind the defense. 4-3 speedster that the fantasy folks are just waiting to break out if somebody can get him the ball. I think the Bears have the horses to compete. It's just not there right now. The connection's just not there. When they're open, there's pressure or Foles is missing them. Foles makes a great play. It's not getting caught. It's just not connecting right now for the Bears.
Well, this is kind of my point, right? Like it feels like we're due the upswing of a Nick Foles roller coaster at some point because the plays are there to be made and he's not making them right now.
Saints have had some issues on the back end. There was a bad coverage bust last week that led to a big touchdown by the Panthers. So that's a factor as well. I'm leaning more toward, I always joke about the indoor-outdoor thing, and you look at it from the lens of the quarterback. I don't think we appreciate enough how difficult it is to play defense indoors 10, 11, 12 games a year. There's a reason why I don't think you see like Peyton Manning's Colts or Breeze and the Saints. Like you don't look back and like, look at that great defense, and it's an indoor team, right? It's a lot of Northeast teams and AFC North, NFC North types of teams. It does matter. So I wonder if this is actually a turning point or just a game where the Saints D looks a lot better going up against the Bears here with the swirling winds.
Yes, the swirling winds.
I think it's a low score. I think it's a low scoring for today's NFL, 20-17 type of game.
It's a great test for this new version of Drew Brees. The two sliders cranked all the way up, anticipation and accuracy. This is going to put that to a test. Now you're outdoors. You only have Kamara basically to play with. Your weapons are even more diminished than they were before. Can Drew Brees still be pinpoint accurate? And it's just, can he thread that needle? Because that's what you're doing at that point. Your margin for error is so small. You basically have to hit every single thing you're aiming for because you're trying to do this in excruciating increments. And so far, the last few weeks, he's been really good at that. This makes it harder. You're going up against a harder defense. You've got fewer weapons, and it's outside.
Yeah, last week he hit those two deep outs I think I talked about on Monday. And it's the proxy for arm strength, but not the way Breeze throws it. It was anticipation. It was accuracy. It was also just pre-snap recognition. I know
it's absurd how
the corner's off. The curl flat defender's going to give me some room. I'm going to throw it early and get it there. I don't think he tries that throw in Chicago, though. I don't think he's going to even try.
If he does, I think it's picked off.
Yeah, an 18-yard deep out. I don't care how early you throw it if it is that bad weather-wise. I don't think we're overrating the weather component, but I just think there's a comfort level that Breeze has indoors in general, but at home, and it's just going to be interesting to see. Here we are, in November. They haven't played outdoors until November. It is fascinating. So I think the Saints are still the better team. I think the Bears their record is inflated, right? I mean, they're not really 5-2, and they started to come back down to earth Monday night against the Rams.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Monday night was a mess of a game for them. Like, that was a disaster, and I think they're better than that. I don't necessarily buy into this idea that they were a complete fraud team. I think there's still something to this idea that they are a good roster that's being held back by the fact that their quarterback has not been amazing yet. Now, it turns out that might actually be way more unlikely to happen than people were anticipating. But I'm still saying, like, at some point, they're going to connect on those big plays that are there, and they're just not finding. Like, if Foles did have a half beat longer, that's a touchdown off the back, like from the shadow of your own end zone. Like, those are big game-swinging plays.
So you think those plays are going to, at some point, they're going to swing?
They're missing too many of them at the moment for that to continue. Like, at some point, that has to swing back in your direction just through natural chance.
For the Saints, Teron Armstead, the left tackle, outstanding left tackle, came out of the game against the Panthers. He's also questionable. I also would not be surprised, as quickly as Breeze likes to get rid of the ball, if Hakeem Hicks, who's been pretty good, and Khalil Mack, who's back to form, 90.7 pass rush grade, I could see them causing some problems, even with the quick passing game for the Saints. So if we come in here on Monday night and it was like, hey, man, that Bears D-line really dominated, wouldn't be surprised by that as well. I will lean Saints, though. I think their defense is going to look a lot better in this one, and I don't know if the Bears are ready to hit on those plays that they've been missing on, Sam.
Yeah, I'm still picking the Saints. I'm off the Bears train since they let me down on Monday night.
It's about time. Let's get to the rest of the slate. Minnesota Vikings at the Green Bay Packers. Packers by 7. Minnesota, so they just traded Yannick Ngakoue a couple weeks ago. And what are you looking for in this one with the Vikings, who are better than they've looked, right? Aren't they?
Are they?
I think they are.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure they think they are. I mean, they traded away Ngakoue. They seem to be making people available for a trade.
Their defense is bad too, but if you not Kirk Cousins thrown to Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, the same description I always use for the Falcons. Like, your baseline has to be a lot higher. Like, you're going to at least be competing.
That's not a team. That's like it's 3 guys.
But it's the most important parts of the team. Like, when you have those guys, you should at least be able to be in every game, and then it's just a couple breaks here and there.
Not when the other 18 people suck.
Yeah, they do.
Not all of them.
What are you looking for?
There's too many holes in this team.
What's the matchup here?
Kenny Clark is kind of back for the Packers now, working his way back from injury. Kenny Clark against the interior of the Vikings offensive line is a monster mismatch when he's healthy. So that's one of those ones that's so bad it has the potential to single-handedly wreck a game plan for you. And I think that's a big reason that Kirk Cousins tends to have some pretty ugly games against Green Bay sometimes. So that, I think, is the single biggest matchup to watch in this. Is Kenny Clark like back to 100%? And if he is, the Vikings come even close to slowing him down inside.
How about the highest graded PFF receiver versus the highest graded cornerback? Nice. Justin Jefferson, the rookie, who has just been fantastic. Dude, he's averaging 19 yards per catch.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be a nice little slot receiver coming out. That's what he was supposed to be. Good feel for the game. Pretty good route runner. 19 per catch, just balling out against Jair Alexander. Also a 90-plus grade, top-graded corner. I was a little critical of Jair coming into the season, thinking there was too much volatility to his game because last year and the year prior, he had a couple really bad games in there. Is he due for one of those? Is this the game where he gives up $150, or is he truly the guy, lockdown status? So I'll be watching that matchup.
Yeah, hasn't had one yet. And Justin Jefferson has genuinely replaced what they lost in Stephon Diggs, which is crazy. Like, the chances of that hitting are tiny. And yet he does appear to have actually done that, at least through whatever it is, 6 games.
I just look at the Vikings and think there was so many games, the Colts game, the Titans, they hung tough, but there was, I can't remember the other game offhand, where they just fell behind so quickly. And it wasn't, like, Cousins didn't play well early in the game and he helped put them in a hole. It was the Falcons game. But the
Falcons game's the one where you have to jump off the Vikings, right? It's like, all right, Atlanta suck as well. You go toe-to-toe with them, and Cousins just goes out there and starts slinging the ball straight to Falcons players.
Right, but some was on Cousins, but there's been some unlucky interceptions there. They've just dug holes that were a little quirky, and I don't see that happening every week. I just think the Vikings are going to play more competitive games in the second half of the season here. And division matchup, second time you play them, it might be a little closer than people expect. Green Bay is favored by 7, though. Do they cover at home?
Yeah, I'm going to take Green Bay. I don't see a reason that the Vikings will keep that close.
Always a Vikings hater every single week. I'll take Green Bay to win, but I think Minnesota might cover. I think they're going to keep it close. Watch out. Minnesota keeps it within 7 this week. Remember it. Tennessee Titans at our hometown Cincinnati Bengals. Titans favored by 5.5, coming off their first loss of the year against the Steelers last week. Sometimes when we analyze QBs in particular, we have ebbs and flows that match the quarterback. Hey, he was great one week, bad the next week. The Bengals seem to be the team that gets QBs back on track. A couple weeks ago, you're ready to write off Phillip Rivers after his game against the Browns. Don't worry, the Bengals are coming to town. Baker Mayfield had his worst game of his career against the Steelers. Don't worry, you got the Bengals next. Ryan Tannehill's coming off his worst grade in 2 years with the Tennessee Titans. Don't worry, you got the Bengals.
Well, they certainly get Baker Mayfield back on track twice.
They do.
In a major way. Yeah, I mean, their defense I don't think is good, and it's not complex either, which is the big stat was they forced Baker to a second read twice. Like, you didn't present him with anything over the course of the entire game that even made him go to a second read, let alone change what he thought he was looking at pre-snap. You just, that's bad. At the very minute, I don't know how much you want to disguise on defense, but it has to be more than that. It has to be more than you can literally go back and throw your first read every single drop back and be okay. So, yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance that Ryan Tannehill and the Tennessee offense has a big day, which puts the focus back on the other side, Joe Burrow and his receivers. What's really interesting is when you look at, he's got a reasonable group of receivers, right? The guys that he has most success throwing to at the moment are T. Higgins, the rookie, and the other Michael Thomas. T. Higgins, he's got a passer rating of 120 when he's throwing his way. And Michael Thomas, the other one, he's got a passer rating of 118 when throwing it his way. Those are the only 2 guys over 100. Like Tyler Boyd, Auden Tate, Erickson, John Ross, A.J. Green, all those guys are way below 100. It's the rookie and the unknown, effectively, that he's actually having success throwing to.
Got 2 guys that will be a part of. When I think of the Bengals, it's who's going to be here next year. Who's going to be here as part of the rebuild. Unfortunately, a lot of those guys are banged up too. William Jackson, Jonah Williams, Joe Mixon, a lot of guys banged up for a team that already doesn't have a ton of talent. Joe Burrow versus Justin Herbert. We just put a tweet out there, PFF, at PFF. 8 touchdowns by Justin Herbert of 20-plus yards, 1 for Burrow, right? Everybody's going to be comparing Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, and soon Tua, who we'll get to. Joe Burrow they've played at a similar level grade-wise. Is Burrow's play more sustainable, though? He's winning at the short and intermediate level versus Herbert down the field. Is that part of the encouraging part of Burrow's play so far? Yeah.
They're complete polar opposites in terms of how they've put together their game. Burrow is being really, really impressive consistently on the easier stuff, the underneath stuff, and the sort of the very stable things. He just doesn't have the big plays. The highlights haven't been there. The spectacular plays haven't really been there. And so people look at him and they're now starting to, like, the shine is coming off his early season performance. And everyone's like, well, is he really that good? And where's this spectacular arm strength? And people are nitpicking his game, right? And then the other side, you've got Justin Herbert, whose entire game is made up of spectacular plays. And it's like, wow, he's playing out of his mind. It's incredible. Look at his third down play. Look at this bomb. And you're like, yeah, but what about all the throws he's missing? And I'm not trying to crap on him. I'm saying they're netting out to about the same, right? I think both guys are impressive right now.
With different styles, right?
But one is like all sizzle, right? And therefore, one is like destined to be a highlight reel player currently. So everyone's losing their mind. And it's like, look at these highlights. They're incredible. Whereas the other guy is like completely bereft of highlights, but actually is way more consistent down to down. And it's ending up at about the same level, but now you've got people saying, well, Herbert's way better than Joe Burrow right now.
There are many games where you come out and you say Justin Herbert had 4 or 5 really, really good plays, some spectacular plays. But the whole body of work beyond that wasn't great. Burrow is absolutely the opposite. It's a lot more consistent. Plus, there's a lot on Burrow's plate. When he's dropping back 45, 50 times in a game, a lot of times in empty, behind a rough offensive line. Not that the Chargers are much better from an O-line standpoint. I'm just saying it is a pass-first attack that the Bengals are running where Herbert's working a little bit more of play action and creating those deep shots. With Burrow, it's interesting. We could actually use similar analysis that we used with Josh Allen last year, where Josh Allen graded well up to 20 yards, and we just look at the deep ball and say, okay, it was horrible, but it has to get better. And it gets better a lot of times because of your receiving talent, and that's what's happened with Allen. If Burrow maintains his 90-plus grade throwing up to 20 yards like he has, the deep stuff is going to show up, and before you know it, that's a complete quarterback.
So here you go, Steve. Using something some guy cobbled together called PFF IQ. You may have heard of it. Joe Burrow, we have, 6 stable metrics grading things that are supposed to be predictive.
Look at you using our tools.
Joe Burrow is in the 60th or better percentile in every single one of them, right? Justin Herbert is he's only above 50 in 2 of them. So 4 out of the 6, he's below the 50th percentile. Joe Burrow is above the 60th percentile in every single one of them. And obviously, the reverse is kind of true with the unstable stuff. Like Justin Herbert's in the 97th percentile in 3rd and 4th down grade, the 81st under pressure. Those are the things that are unstable that don't tend to sustain year on year. This is the Carson Wentz thing. This is 2017 Carson Wentz, where it's like, yes, at the time, it's incredible, and it's well-deserved to talk about Carson Wentz as an MVP candidate back then, and we can talk about Justin Herbert as a Rookie of the Year candidate right now. But if you're looking at it and projecting it forward, what you have to ask is, does that continue? And the answer is almost certainly no.
This is the best analysis you've ever had.
Thank you.
The PFF NFL Podcast is brought to you by PFF IQ. Thank you so much, Sam, for tapping into it. If you are a player evaluator at the NFL level, keep an eye out for PFF IQ coming soon. So who do you like in this game? Tennessee by 5.5.
Titans. I mean, yeah.
Tennessee's going to look like a Super Bowl contender again.
I don't see how the Bengals stop that Titans offense, at which point it almost doesn't matter what. Like, Burrow's got to play out of his mind.
I really hope William Jackson plays just to see him and A.J. Brown match up. I just love those good matchups. So dude, I like Tennessee as well.
Jackson's frustrating. He should be better than he is.
I know. Peaked as a rookie. Tennessee.
Not even a rookie. It was like year 1, but second season because he tore a pec as his rookie season.
Not Tennessee. Thanks for cutting me off because I was saying the wrong thing. Game of the week, New York Jets at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs by 104.
Yeah. 19.5 is the spread right now.
I honestly thought I was going to see 28. I really thought this was going to be like a Clemson Georgia Tech type of.
Okay, well, first of all, give us the what's.
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't look forward.
Well, then
to
what I will do
target.
is instead it's 19.5 points, right? I think a lot of people are saying that that's soft. If anything, it's more the other way. Just in terms of our PFF power ratings, as we talked about before, how good a team is on a neutral field. The Chiefs are 9.5 points better than average, right? The Jets are 8.2 worse than average. So there's what, a 17.7 point spread just from
showing up.
From being there in the ELO rankings. In terms of like what our data says about these two teams, there's an immediate 18.5 point spread between them. I would like to pose the question of what would need to happen for the Jets to win this game.
I think, so we've got offensive line rooms grabbing the COVID.
Immediately you have to lose Mahomes, right?
Yeah.
They cannot win this game if Mahomes is playing.
What would have to happen is introducing Kansas City Chiefs starting quarterback Chad Henne.
Right.
That's step one.
Step one, right. Immediately you have to take Mahomes out of the game.
Step two, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. And Chris Jones.
You just lose everybody.
Tyrann Mathieu.
Yeah.
And then you're good. It would have to start with Mahomes. I don't know. So I'm of the minds that the Jets are bad, but much like the Dolphins last year, first half of the season were like disastrous bad. Like they were a quality SEC team for the first 8 games. Then they started to kind of play teams tough in the second half. And did we start to see that last week with the Jets against the Bills? At the very least, keep the ball in front of you and make them dink and dunk down the field. Can the Jets at least do that?
Or was that like their one shot at like avoiding
or it's
an
their
0-16
one, and it's
team?
the second game against a division opponent, and you're at home, and all that stuff's happening.
Because like the weeks before, the thing that was really concerning about the Jets is that they weren't even playing hard. Like they weren't even making it difficult for teams. They were just rolling over. This week, they at least looked like they were interested in winning a game for at least a half, right? Until the second half where they gained 4 yards. But like that might have been their shot. That might have been the one game that every team tends to have, even terrible teams, where it's really hard to go 0-16. Because 1 week, you're going to be feeling it. You're going to wake up, the coffee's kicked in, and you're in a good place, and you just play better than you thought you were going to, and you get a shock win. That might have been their one effort at that, and now you got to play the Chiefs, and you're going to get shellacked for 40 points.
I am wondering how much the Chiefs put on Mahomes in this game, because they've been winning in just, unexciting fashion. They scored 43 last week, but it was, a kick return, pick six, and all that stuff. You're not getting that dominant, ridiculous Mahomes outing. Are they just sitting on those as, we'll pull that out when we need it? Or is it this week, all right, let's go crush the Jets, throw for 5 touchdowns in the first half and take a break? I think the Chiefs dominate this one. Jets fans.
Yes.
Saturday at noon, Boston College
takes
on Clemson. Noon start, Halloween. Trevor Lawrence is coming off of a grade in the 60s, a 67 passing grade. So far this year in 6 games, he's got 3 games over 90, an 84, and 2 games in the 60s. So we want to see Trevor Lawrence bounce back. Had 2 turnover-worthy plays in that. He's actually got 6 turnover-worthy plays over the last 3 weeks. So, not to put a damper on the Jets' future here, but Trevor's showing some signs of weakness right now. No, he's still awesome. But yeah, check that out. Noon Eastern, Boston College.
That would be like
Clemson.
the worst thing you could possibly do, the Jets fans. The only thing they've got going is you're going to get Trevor Lawrence at the end of the season.
Trevor Lawrence is losing it. He's careless with the ball.
Started to point out flaws in Trevor Lawrence's game. Now the whole thing, forget about it.
I want some actual Jets analysis really quick.
Okay.
There were some rumors about Quinnen Williams being drafted. There were some bad takes by Bucky Brooks saying that he's not playing well. Quinnen is playing much better this year than he was last year. Disruptive in the run game. He is flying off the ball, hand position. A lot of things are good. He's blowing up interior offensive linemen. Top 20 pass rusher this year as an interior lineman. So if you're number 3 overall expectations, he might, 2 year, he's below that.
Yeah, he's not there yet.
But he's improving and getting better, and it's certainly not a guy that you're just going to flip for a 3rd or 4th rounder at this point in his career.
Which is, I think, the state of things, right? Is that everybody, a lot of teams are calling about Quinnen Williams.
Yeah, we'll give you a 3rd, we'll give you a 4th.
Yeah, because obviously the Jets are in essentially sell mode. Their season's done. Teams are trying to acquire him. But if you're the Jets, he's exactly the kind of player you want in a rebuild. You don't want to be shopping him unless the offer is insane. And I think they're 2 very far apart things right now. The team's trying to get him versus what the Jets will actually take for him. I don't think they're particularly close to meeting.
Chiefs to win and cover the 19.5?
Oh, God. I mean, Sure. Why not?
I really thought it was going to be 25, so I'll take the Chiefs to cover. I really thought that. So let's go. Indianapolis Colts at the Detroit Lions. I like this matchup. Sneaky good game in this one. Colts they've had a fairly easy schedule to this point, and the Lions are, after this game, hitting that easy part of their schedule to the point where I said on Monday they're going to make a little playoff run, but you got to get by the Colts first, and Colts are favored by 3. What are you looking for in this Colts-Lions matchup?
Kenny Galladay against Xavier, temporarily at least, roads closed again. Kenny Galladay is just fun to watch. Like, I don't know if he's worth the hype that some other people seem to hold him in, but the guy made 6 contested catches last week. They were all freaky.
Did you just call out George?
No. They were all
George
freaky.
Had Galladay as the number 1 receiver in the NFC North before the season. Tell him, how wrong was he?
I mean, I think he was pretty wrong. Devontae Adams is the best receiver in the NFC North.
Cool. Carry on.
So after that, you've got him going up against Xavier Rhodes, who has been really good this year. Like, it wasn't just Sam Darnold throwing him a couple of picks that inflated his numbers. That certainly helped, but like, he's been playing well. His numbers are completely different to where they were in the last couple of seasons in Minnesota. He's basically an advertisement for how, like, maybe sometimes you shouldn't ask a guy to play hurt, banged up, in a, hanging him out to dry in a scheme that's not helping him.
Do you think that's the majority of his decline?
Yeah, it's looking like it, right? He's a different guy right now. So the only 2 things that have changed. He went to a completely different environment. Either the whole thing is scheme related, and I don't think the schemes are that different, or he was playing hurt. And the guy spent most of his last 2 years in Minnesota, like, going out after a few plays, nursing something, right? So I think it's not a giant leap to think that he was battling through a bunch of stuff during that time. At which point, like, again, this idea of, this player battling through something is better than his backup, like, there's probably a line at which that isn't true anymore, and Xavier Rhodes was almost certainly over it for the past couple of seasons.
There was a rumor that Kenny Galladay was almost traded to the New York Giants.
Wow.
And, I mean, it speaks to a couple things. The Lions, who should be, trying to make a little playoff run here, and the Giants, who, because they're in the NFC East, they can't get eliminated officially until, late December, if they're going to be. The Giants think that they're players right now and have a chance.
I mean, they are, right?
They technically are, but the fact that
they're half a game back in the division.
Yeah, I understand. But they're still looking to this year to make a move with Kenny Galladay. I think this
is the thing that sort of interests me about the NFC East, right? Because technically they're all still in it, right?
They're all buyers.
Every team is just another piece away from a playoff run. On the other hand, does it matter? Like, if you get to the playoffs with your 5-win team, like, do you honestly think you're going to win against a good team? Like, you're just going to get your ass kicked and go home. Like, what? Is there any point, I guess, and my question is there a positive purpose to winning the division only to get your ass kicked and get booted out of the playoffs and be taken in the 20s?
It depends on where you are in your life cycle as general manager or head coach.
So the only purpose essentially is to extend the life of the people in the building. Correct. Okay.
Yes. That's not and both of these, both Detroit and the Giants are interestingly in that place, right? Where it's a pivotal year for Dave Gettleman. It's for Bob Quinn in Detroit. I like Detroit, man. I like the way they're coming together. I like the way the passing offense is starting to look like we thought it would before the season. I don't know if we get elite Matthew Stafford again this week, but anything close, I like it. I don't think the Colts are as good defensively as they looked those first few weeks, right?
Yeah, I could buy that. I mean, yeah, I think that was a little bit of an overinflation of how good they were. I think they are still a good defense, though, and that's being borne out. And this is a really fun matchup.
It is. It's a good one. I like watching what Detroit has done defensively. They were getting some pressure. Can they get pressure on Phillip Rivers? That's going to determine this one as well. Does he start throwing the ball to the other team?
Yeah.
Or if the Colts can keep him clean like they did the first 5 weeks.
Which doesn't necessarily necessitate pressure. Like Phillip Rivers is just having those spasms at the moment.
But the way Detroit, they were scheming it up. Phantom pressure has been getting to Rivers as well.
That's my point. Yeah.
I like Detroit in this one, and they're 3-point underdogs. So I'm gonna finally take an underdog. Home dog, man. Go get them.
Yep.
Go get those Lions. All right, here we go. Tua time.
Yes.
3.5-point underdog against the Rams. Weird stuff happens in Miami, Sam. Rams at the Dolphins. Can the Rams? the pressing question is this. Can the Rams also... No, they can't win the AFC East. They already lost to the Bills. Forget it.
AFC East.
I was going to say, could they sweep the AFC East as well?
Incredible.
Could you imagine? Rams, Aaron Donald.
West Coast team, king of the East.
Right? That'd be great. At Miami. What are you looking for here?
I mean, it's all Tua and how he survives behind that offensive line facing Aaron Donald. Basically, so this is an interesting analysis of how much Miami is actually aware of all of the situations or all of the circumstance pressing on what they've done, right? They've decided that Tua is an upgrade over Fitzpatrick, or at the very least, they need to start seeing what they have because of what we've seen from Burrow and Herbert. If they are sensible, they understand that their offensive line is not in good shape and that even if it's much better than it was a year ago, it's still bad. And it's still more than bad enough to cause problems for a young quarterback. And Fitzpatrick has been really helping it out over the first few games, right? And they also should know that they're facing Aaron Donald, right? All of those things put together should lead you to seeing a very, very concerted and obvious game plan to mitigate all of those factors, right? If they don't, this feels like it will be a bad day at the office for Tua. So I think the thing to watch is, what does this game plan look like right out of the gate for the Dolphins? Like, what are they going to try and do to mitigate all of those things we talked about? And is it the right thing to do? Because there's still this world where a lot of NFL coaches believe that the single biggest thing you can do to protect your quarterback is to run the ball on 1st and 10, right? Whereas actually that's the thing that undermines him. It puts him in a harder position on 3rd and 8 when you actually need him to be, when you need his life to be easier.
As of 2 weeks ago, Dr. Eric Eager has his. We have to keep him hidden for various reasons, but he had his rankings of offensive and defensive coordinators and had both Dolphins coordinators in the top 5, offense and defense, and it generally stems from how well are you playing compared to your grades, and a little bit from a decision-making standpoint. Are you play action and not running into walls and all that stuff? So I think the Dolphins will be okay there. Make a prediction. What is the feeling on Tua coming out of his first start? What do you think we're talking about Monday morning as far as our reaction to his first game?
I think this will go down as a disappointing start, and it won't be his fault. I think whatever game plan they're going to have will not be tremendously successful at limiting the impact of Aaron Donald, and limiting the impact of Aaron Donald at the same time as maximizing the potential of Tua, at which point you're going to come out of this game thinking, I mean, is Tua, should they have picked Justin Herbert?
Oh boy.
That's the Monday narrative, right? Should the Dolphins have picked Justin Herbert? And I think the whole thing is going to be bullshit, but that's the situation they put themselves in.
I think they'll be more positive than negative with Tua. I think, I compared him to Jimmy Garoppolo coming out for a couple reasons. That most of the game he's going to look quick release and all these good things are happening, but he'll hold the ball a tick long a couple times. I think there'll be a few rookie-ish plays in there, but he also has he's got some natural playmaking ability to him too. I think there'll be enough flashes that people are feeling good about Tua, but I like the Rams in this one. I like the way their defense is playing though too. Underrated part of that, beyond just Donald.
Luckily,
doing
though,
some cool stuff on the back
they'll
end.
be able to have that protective game plan and run the ball for 200 yards because Aaron Donald is such a liability against the run.
Don't even start. Did Brian Burke? He already went on Kev Cole's podcast.
Did he?
But I don't even want to have him on here to explain it because it's just bad.
It is.
The
It's
ESPN run defense metric that has Aaron Donald historically, or last year as an average run defender, not necessarily this year, and some of the examples that have been shown of him as a poor run defender are poor analysis.
Yeah, they're ridiculous. That's the problem, right? I think the point that he's trying to make, why did I just go all squeaky there?
I don't know.
The point that he's trying to make is not wholly without merit, right? I think you can make an argument that there are plays where Aaron Donald is over-aggressive and takes himself out of the play on routine run plays that are problematic for a defense, right? And whether it's Donald or whether it's the fact that you're embracing that style as a defense, it's not good. On the other hand, I think they're also using a few different data points that are just not telling the whole story about Donald's impact against the run, right? There's a lot of things he does in terms of that penetration that are good and you're not giving him credit for that. In fact, if anything, you're penalizing him for it because of the way this system works, right? there's a whole discussion, I think, that's very valid to be had with that. On the other hand, the discussion that is currently being had is Brian Burke going out there with a bunch of plays that are just ridiculous. They're dumb, they're stupid, and if you ran that past anybody who knows what they're looking at, they would say, okay, don't tweet those out. That would make you look very stupid.
Well, he said he's got 40 of them.
And he's done it twice now, right? He did it earlier and was the same reaction, right? Everyone was like, what are you talking about? Those are actually positive Donald plays for the most part, and most of them are definitely not negative, right? He doubled down on, like, if you took that weight of crap the first time around, would you not be like, all right, I still think I'm right, but at the very minimum, the next time when I get my 40 gifts, I'm going to run it past somebody in the building who knows what they're doing and can tell me if these are good plays to tweet or not to make this point. He didn't do that, went out with the same thing and is immediately shellacked again. There's one play where there's literally no defensive body in either A gap. They run right up the middle, and he's like, well, Donald shot his B gap here and took himself out of the play. This is bad. Like, what? I can't. Like, the brain doesn't even function to generate a response to that. It's just, what are you doing?
I appreciate ESPN's effort to try to quantify things like that, but I do not think they're doing a good job of it. How's that? My diplomatic answer. It also feels like they're trying to take, we grade every single player on every play, right? There's might be 1,000 snaps for a player. I feel like they're trying to put positive or negative on everything, and maybe losing sight of the neutral plays. There are many just you're playing your gap and the guy blocking you is cool with where you're playing your gap, like neutral plays. I think there's a lot of that's just not being pulled out of the ESPN analysis. Aaron Donald's still a very disruptive run defender. So we like the Rams in this one.
Yeah,
by 3.5. They're going to cover that on the road.
Sure.
I think it's close. At Miami, crazy stuff. New England at Buffalo. Patriots going to first place. Buffalo Bills. Wow. The Patriots in danger of falling to 2-5.
Yeah.
Coming off a disastrous outing against the 49ers. The Bills with a workmanlike 19-10 win. 18 to 10,
right? All field goals
against the Jets. 6 for 8 on field goals. This feels like a game where New England can at least bounce back. Buffalo's got the lowest rated run defense by us. They've been absolutely destroyed on the ground, whether it was game plan oriented or not against the Chiefs. Who knows? They do not have the bodies to hold up against a good power run game, whether it's by design or not. This feels like the game where the Patriots, they're getting written off a little bit when they drop 250 on the ground. Yeah. Now, it might only lead to 20 points, but I think run game-wise, I think New England's they're going to look more efficient offensively, I think.
Yeah, I agree that this is the game where every now and again New England does this, where they just run the ball into the ground and dominate a team in the run game, and that's their game plan for this game. This is the game where that would happen, and I think it'll probably be reasonably successful because, as you say, the Bills just don't defend the run well. Even if they voluntarily made it worse, essentially, against Kansas City, I don't think they can stop a powerful ground game, particularly not one that leans on Cam Newton as that extra game-changing body and difference maker. So I think the Patriots will have some success. The interesting thing is going to be the other side of the ball, whether the Patriots defense can stop Buffalo's offense, because the Patriots defense hasn't been good either. Like, they got wrecked by the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan just completely dominated that game plan. And they had a game plan. Like, they rolled out there with that sort of 6-man defensive front to try and shut down all the wide zone stuff, and it just didn't work. So is the Patriots defense now in a spot where they just don't have the bodies to execute what they want to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because I want to know what they do on the Josh Allen apology tour here. Josh Allen last year against New England, the first game in Buffalo, one of the worst games by a quarterback all last season. He was a little bit better in New England. The Patriots tend to make life difficult for opposing quarterbacks overall, but hasn't been the case as much this year. So Allen only a 65 grade since I ripped up that sheet of paper. So does he get back to making you look right for apologizing to him? That's my big question here. Post-apology Allen.
Post-apology Allen has looked a lot like pre-2020 Allen, which is a little bit concerning. I do think there's a weird degree to which this offense relies on John Brown Actually, I haven't quite unpacked yet. I don't.
Well, here
know
it is
why.
because defending 3 receivers, and I know Davis has played well for them, but like defending 3 receivers is difficult. And they built a receiving core with 3 very unique skill sets: a speed receiver in Brown, a slot receiver in Cole Beasley, an all-around weapon in Stephon Diggs who wins at every level.
Yeah.
Just matching up with that, especially for a Patriots D that plays matchups, is very difficult.
That last part is the problem, right? Stephon Diggs can do that stuff as well. Why is there not a more seamless transition between the deep threat from John Brown and the deep threat that isn't there when he isn't on the field? Why are they not able to plug Stephon Diggs into those roles, or even Gabriel Davis, and say, you're the deep threat in this game, make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, there were questions about that, but I mean, he's a better deep threat. I mean, he's a better pure speed threat than those guys.
Sure.
And you don't want Diggs just, he's not just running deep posts and overs all day.
No, but you could have
all.
him do it and it would be fine, is my point, and yet it isn't.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Allen, that as much as I talk about domes and all that stuff, you also have to understand that Allen's, he throws in lesser conditions as well too. So I think statistically he's always going to have to regress just a little bit, especially the wind in Buffalo and the things that he has to deal with. But I want to see if this Bills passing offense can get back on track. So
yeah,
it should be a good matchup. Does New England, if they fall to 2-5, they're done, right? That's their season.
They might already be done. I mean, they're talking about shipping off Stephon Gilmore. They may already be mailing it in for next season.
I like the Bills. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if New England pulls this one off.
Yeah, I'm in the same kind of boat, I think. I think Buffalo will win, but it really wouldn't shock me if this was the game where we come out of it saying, the Patriots are actually okay.
Yeah. Las Vegas Raiders at the Cleveland Browns. The Raiders got destroyed last week against the Bucs. They've been just a weird team, right? They beat the Saints. They just, sneak up on some teams, but overall, it seems like the weaknesses we thought that they had coming in, which is the back 7, has been a major weakness, especially against good passing offenses.
Yeah, I'm curious. The Browns are very bad against the deep ball. Their secondary is not great. When you're relying on Andrew Sendejo playing a decent role as a coverage safety, that's a problem. So I think they've been giving up a pass rating of like 117, something like that, to deep passes. We've been talking all season long about how the key to this Raiders offense is Henry Ruggs and what he does to Derek Carr and the deep ball that they have as a threat that wasn't there before, which doesn't always manifest itself in targets to Henry Ruggs. It can be targets to Nelson Aguilar or whatever, but the point is it's open in a way it wasn't before. That's a particularly enticing option against this Cleveland secondary. Does that cause Derek Carr to just be hyper-aggressive in this game and put up some points, or does he not take advantage of it enough and now you have to stop Cleveland's offense?
I like Cleveland in this one. I think we're not saying Baker's going to be better without OBJ, but I think they can take advantage of their skill sets. They like to throw to the tight ends. They'll scheme up some tight end stuff. Higgins will work the short and intermediate stuff. We see more Donovan Peoples-Jones maybe being a deep threat. I can't wait to see what Baker does and if he can maintain the level of play or close to it what he had last week. I think the matchup against the Raiders does favor that. So I like Cleveland 2.5 here at home. I think they'll cover it.
The Baker thing just scares me. I just don't trust him as a quarterback right now.
Don't bet on volatile quarterbacks like Baker. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Stay away from that. But I guess I'm going Cleveland this week. We got another division matchup, a couple more to get through here. Chargers at the Broncos. If you're Chargers fans and you clicked on this part of the podcast or you fast forwarded to hear your Chargers analysis, go back to the Bengals analysis because we did get into some of the Herbert versus Burrow discussion. You'll probably hate it because we said Herbert's doing great, but he's probably not going to keep it going.
It's a good thing we put timestamps, otherwise you just pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah, so go back to the Bengals analysis for a little bit, Burrow versus Herbert. How about Drew Lock, though, for the Broncos? He's about what we expected, right? Not the franchise guy necessarily, and not the guy that you
coming into the season. I wrote quarterback rankings that actually put rankings on people as opposed to yours with the tiers, the fence sitter rankings as we call them.
I mean the tiers.
And I ranked Drew Lock, I think 32nd in the NFL, dead last. And Broncos fans hated that. They thought I was an idiot. They thought it was crazy. Look at all the good things he did last year, and he's had one good game. Right, one good game where he looked, maybe I got that wrong. So I wrote new ones, and I think I moved him up one spot on the basis that Washington went from Haskins, who was bad, to Kyle Allen, who's also bad. Whatever. Drew Lock has not been the guy they thought he would be. He hasn't taken this big step forward. He really just hasn't developed. He's made one game where he started throwing the ball around, actually making some big-time throws. And ironically, in that game, nobody caught them or people broke them up in the end zone, so his passer rating was like 30. But
his best game had a passer rating of 30 against the Patriots. But we gave him proper credit for it.
We just haven't seen good Drew Lock.
As this is happening, Twitter, CBS HQ is tweeting out Justin Herbert's 2020 stats and their all-time rank in his first 5 career games. Second in passing yards, tied for 4th in passing touchdowns, 5th in completion percentage, Sam, and 4th in passer rating at 108.1. I take it all back. Herbert's going to the Hall of Fame.
It did. The article is interesting because the headline is PFF throws shade on Drew Lock and his mom.
What?
Yeah.
Who called you out on that? Was one of the...
This is SI. The Austin's just dropped it in the chat. I don't have time to read that and
this
figure
was
out
before the season?
How he slandered his mother, but apparently we hate his mother as well.
SI.com. I mean, I don't know. Drew Lock, they won games last year kind of, while he was the quarterback, not because he was the quarterback.
I mean, they've assembled receivers to help him out, to make him look better. I think it was the right approach. We were talking all offseason. I applaud exactly what they did, knowing that they couldn't start over, right? They didn't have the luxury of blowing it all up and getting another quarterback and going through this whole John Elway finding quarterback thing again. They had to roll with Drew Lock. And he hasn't stepped up yet, except one game.
Now, granted, Cortland Sutton's been out.
Right.
They haven't had all the guys, but man, you still want to see more from Lock. If it's going to be the guy you're tying your franchise to, what else are you looking for in this game, matchup-wise?
I mean, obviously, the Justin Herbert thing is interesting, but Garrett Bowles has quietly taken a big step forward this year.
You know why?
Why?
The NFL stopped calling holding.
That definitely helps.
The guy who has 15 to 17 penalties per year.
Yeah.
And that's really, I mean, if you take out those plays, he's really good. So the NFL stops calling holding. I mean, somebody tell the Broncos that they're going to stop calling holding before they decline his 5th-year option.
Yeah.
Poor Broncos get screwed here.
You're right. He's been flagged twice this season.
That's pretty much it. That's the difference.
It really is.
Other than the fact that he gets whooped and just, tackles guys, he's pretty good. Like, he's a reasonable run blocker.
He had
He's,
17 penalties last year.
Right.
I need to find out how many you're holding, but most of them.
Probably.
4 sacks last year, none, I think, this year. Yeah, you're right. It's basically the difference is Garrett Bowles has gone from being a good player who every now and again gets whooped and tackles somebody to being a good player who every now and again gets whooped and tackles somebody and they no longer call it as a penalty.
Like, if we got this memo from the NFL, hey, we're going to stop holding, Garrett's going to be the best tackle in the league this year.
To be fair, like, the bad beats were what got him before. This season, he's only allowed like 4 total pressures.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, it's not just the holding, but that's probably a big part of it.
Plus, he quote tweets when we say nice stuff about him.
The point is, the guy's gone from being a potential liability, though I think it was always overblown how bad he was because they were all holding penalties and became like highlight things, to a really good player. He now goes up against the Chargers edge rushers, who are a problem, obviously.
And Bowles hits free agency as they declined his 5th-year option. From a Herbert standpoint, I want to see more of a complete game. I know he's completing 67% of his passes, but he's still... Last week, he missed a ton. I want to see more of the sustainable stuff. The stable stuff, Sam, that you listed earlier from Herbert. I like the Chargers in this one. They're favored by 3 at Denver. Sunday Night Football, a classic NFC East matchup. The Dallas Cowboys at the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
Eagles by 9.
Right.
What?
The 2-4-1 Philadelphia Eagles are favored by 9. And you know what? It's not crazy.
Nobody has faith. Well,
it's not nuts. Here's my favorite stat of the week. Using PFF stuff. Again, you go to the power ratings page on PFF Greenline. We have a quarterback metric that's essentially the number of points difference that they make to the spread if they're not in the lineup, right? So if you remove Patrick Mahomes, as we talked about, how much does that make a difference to the betting line? 9.5 points versus a replacement player for Patrick Mahomes.
So wait, the Chad Henne Chiefs would be favored by 10 over the Jets?
Yes.
Okay.
Give
or take.
Now, effectively every quarterback is worth something over replacement, right? That's why they're starting and not replacement players. Do you know the one player that is not a positive impact in the spread versus replacement?
Ben DiNucci?
Yes. According to our data, the Dallas Cowboys get 0.5 point better in the spread if Ben DiNucci, if a replacement level player and not Ben DiNucci is their starting quarterback.
Like?
Anybody.
Kellen Moore.
Garrett Gilbert. Pick a guy off the street, throw him in there.
I want Kellen Moore. I want Kellen Moore to activate himself, call the plays, whip it around. Kellen Moore has a 400-yard passing game in this league.
Yeah, I mean, this is genuinely saying if you just claimed a guy off somebody else's practice squad, threw him into the starting lineup, you'd be half a point better off than if you have Ben DiNucci in there.
Cowboys should be buyers. Go get Fitz. Get yourself some Fitz. Get some Trubisky. Get somebody.
I just think that's a great stat.
Andy Dalton got that cheap shot, might keep him out. The concussion from last week, did not practice Wednesday.
I mean, I think will. There's no way they're
concussion protocol. So if it is DiNucci in the 9-point spread.
I mean, not only is it's DiNucci, who, poor guy, probably doesn't have a shot anyway, behind one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL because everyone's got hurt. They're probably getting, who's a right guard?
Zach Martin.
There you go.
Yeah.
Zach Martin, perennial All-Pro. Guy you'd forget easily. Zach Martin's probably coming back from his concussion protocol, but outside of him, everybody else is hurt. And they're buried in the depth chart. Like Cameron Irving is starting at left tackle for them consistently. That's not good. So he's just got, and you're going up against an Eagles defense, and the line is still in pretty good shape. You've got your guy Brandon Graham chasing your sack record.
Ooh,
you've got
you might owe me lunch next week.
Right. You've got Fletcher Cox still dominating. Like the Eagles are still able to get pressure. I don't see how this Cowboys offense can function, and we already know the defense is terrible. So the Eagles are 9-point favorites, and I think they're good for it.
The Dallas defense will be completely turned around, though, because Darryl Worley and his perfect passer rating against has been released. And Dontari Poe has also been released, owner of one pressure on 134 pass rushes this year.
Yeah.
They cited weight and play as the reason for his release. So Poe and Worley are out.
Yeah.
Dallas has to make some adjustments on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe that's the start.
They do.
I like Philly.
The Eagles could take a commanding lead in the division now. 3-4-1.
Yeah. I mean,
still a game behind the Rams.
My famous line here in the first half of the season, better than they look, or the Eagles have to be a little better than they've showed.
I don't think they are, but I think they'll get better as people get healthier. I mean, Jalen Reagor is coming back off IR. They're going to get healthier, which will make them better, but they're not good.
Let's wrap it up with Monday Night Football. Tampa Bay Bucs at the New York Giants. For the second straight week, so there were some trends with the Bucs this year. Mm-hmm. They just faced back-to-back teams coming off of byes, and now they face a team coming off of a 10-day Thursday Night Football. They've also faced back-to-back teams with the whole O-line in quarantine during the week. So the Raiders last week, and this week it's the Giants. Not the defensive front you need to be quarantined and not practicing against if they're going to play this game Monday night.
Well, the good news is JPP doesn't watch tape, so we won't know any better.
Man, that was the question. You really wanted to ask that Joe Thomas about that last week.
Well, also,
right?
Joe Thomas wanted to be asked about that. He has takes, apparently, so we have to get him back on.
We'll get Joe back on the
are.
show to discuss that, yeah. The Bucs defense has looked really good the last couple weeks. Mm-hmm. The offense has looked really good the last couple weeks. Giants defense has been sneaky good compared to what they, were supposed to be coming in, but the offense is just not moving the ball consistently.
No, and this feels like it's going to be tough sledding for them, right? You're going up against a defensive line that should cause problems whether you have your offensive line or not. And they've got coverage guys on the back end that can lock up your receivers, which are probably the strength of that offense. So if this is another game where you're going to come out of it and you're like, poor old Daniel Jones, does he have a shot?
This was Jones' first start last year, though. It was against Todd Bowles. He made a lot of key plays under pressure. But this also feels like the game that's like a 60% under pressure game. They're getting after him over 50% of the time.
Right.
And he's taking some direct shots from linebackers and things like that.
He's the most pressured quarterback in the NFL by percentage of dropbacks. 44%, I think, which
really
again
bad.
is like nuts.
So it should be a beatdown if they play this game.
Yeah.
Chris Godwin's hurt for the Bucs.
Yep.
But he should be back for the following week against the Saints on Sunday Night Football, also when Antonio Brown is supposed to make his debut. Mm-hmm. So we both taking the Bucs to cover 10.5 on the road here.
Yeah, 10.5's a lot.
Wow.
Really? I'm definitely taking them to win, but I mean, if the Giants have their offensive line, they will cover. If they don't, they won't. If they don't, it won't be played.
I'll take the Bucs to cover. Antonio Brown coming to the Bucs. We've discussed it with our guest here, Kevin Clark. He wrote all about it. Great interview with Kevin Clark from The Ringer. So that'll do it for the game previews. Let's get to Kevin and discuss Antonio Brown, rugby,
mustaches,
and the best Kevin Clarks in the world.
That too.
All right, happy to be joined by Kevin Clark of The Ringer. Kevin, welcome, and tell everybody, before we start, where can everybody find all your great work so they know?
So I host the Ringer NFL show twice a week. This week we have Mike Tannenbaum, Ryan Shazier, Nora Princiati. On Sundays we have Nora. And then Slow News Day, which we had Peter King on this week, and he dropped some heaters. I actually just saw the Boston Globe aggregated some of his Tom Brady comments. So Slow News Day doesn't always make news, but we did this week because Peter King was ready to just drop bombs on the New England Patriots.
Nice. What a crew. Nora, she's a colleague. She's always fascinated about my by Doug Kyde. Her
cousin Doug.
Cousin Doug. she just can't get over the fact that that's my wife's stepmom's cousin's daughter's husband. Yeah. Right. So cousin Doug. So we're just asking Nora about that one.
How did you discover that?
I think question. My wife's stepmom said, "Hey, do you know Doug?" And I said, "Yeah, he's a Twitter friend." Twitter friend. We all have their Twitter friends. And she said, "Well, my cousin's daughter is marrying him." So then there was like one family reunion. We met up. I was like, "Hey, Doug, it's about time." We see each other every year at the combine and stuff like that. And then at one random family reunion, and we were telling Nora about that one time, and she just thought it was the funniest thing in the world, and always tried to figure out what it was, like what the ties were. And then my good friend Mike Tannenbaum.
You're not related to him as well?
Not at all.
Okay,
just a good friend like Mike. So that's great. Check out all Kev's stuff. Let's talk some NFL, man. You were right about Antonio Brown recently. That's the big news with him signing to the Tampa Bay Bucs. What are your thoughts on the whole situation?
So on the field, if he can stay on the field, it's probably going to work out. But that doesn't mean this is a move that the Bucs should have done. I saw an analogy a couple of days ago that I really liked, which is this is like hitting in blackjack when you're on 18 or 19. Maybe it works out, but you don't really need to do it, because I think this is the sign of a desperate team. And when I actually watch the Bucs play, they shouldn't be desperate at all. They're one of the most complete teams in the NFC, and they might make the Super Bowl. And so I'm curious to know why. I know Tom Brady was pushing for it. I know Jason Licht and Bruce Arians, kind of wanted to. I guess they gave in to his 8 months pleading after essentially it was ruled out in March. But from my perspective, I just don't know why you take a chance on a guy who there are now three teams, and say what you will about John Gruden and Mike Mayock, but I think they're three really smart organizations. Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin, Bill Belichick, the Raiders, they've all given up on Antonio Brown. They've done everything they could to get him out of the building. And so I think that when you take a chance on a guy like that, that just sort of reeks of a situation that they shouldn't have to put themselves in. I don't think that they should have taken this chance. Again, it might work out because Antonio Brown is such a dominant player. Now, all of a sudden, Mike Evans doesn't have to be double teamed, all that stuff. It unlocks certain things in the offense. But I think there's a real chance that it derails the season off the field. And I just don't know why you take that chance when things are going so well.
In your article, you had this great anecdote about one of those sort of giant investment firms buying L'Oreal. Talk us through that. Explain it to us.
Yeah, so this is something I bring up all the time with player evaluation, and it was two private equity guys buying Revlon, and essentially Revlon wanted one guy to buy it, and so they gave him the books and not the other guy, and then the guy who didn't get the books bid more than the guy who did get the books. And they said, "Why are you doing that?" And he said, "Well, the guy who got the books is the smartest guy in the world. So if he saw the books and still bid, I know it's a good investment, right?" And so when I think about player evaluation, you're never going to have a guy in the building. You're going to, so to speak, see the books, okay? But what you're going to have to do is look when smart people make decisions, go based on that, okay? So Pittsburgh wanted him out of the building. He chucked a ball at Ben Roethlisberger. He went AWOL 3 times in 2018. In Oakland, he just did all sorts of disaster stuff. He tried to fight Mike Mayock. He went to war with helmet manufacturers, all that stuff. And then in New England, obviously, he sends the text messages that get him cut almost immediately as soon as the report comes out. So there's now 3 teams who've given up on him. What makes Bruce Arians and Jason Licht think that this will be any different? There's no evidence, none whatsoever, that Antonio Brown has changed. There's no evidence that he's ready to be more mature than he was in his previous stops. That's why I think this is a risk, is because there's some teams that told us what to think about Antonio Brown, and I don't know why the Bucs would be an exception here.
So I guess my question on this is, so all of that stuff is true. The downside that they won't want him in the locker room, or maybe there won't be enough footballs to go around, or eventually they have to cut him. Does that affect the on-field product going forward? Just talking football, just talking the on-field product. Is that actual downside. Because like when he left New England, the downside was if Antonio Brown's not there, Tom Brady has no one to throw to. The chance that I think the Bucs are taking is Mike Evans has played hurt, Chris Godwin has played hurt and is hurt again. This is an insurance policy, albeit a volatile one, but an insurance policy for this already great receiving core. And if for some reason it doesn't work out, we still have these great players. So is that downside actually going to affect the on-field product, I guess would be the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all goes hand in hand. If Tom Brady's been asking for 8 months to bring him in, and then they cut him after one game, if he's, Peter King made the example, if he's late for a meeting by 1 minute, do they cut him? And that seems to be the situation that Arians is trying to set up and the parameters for him joining there. And so you get into what exactly matters when it comes to the locker room seeping onto the on-field product. I don't know. I mean, I've never been on a football team at any sort of high level to speak on what happens if Tom Brady gets mad if they cut him, or if Tom Brady is now trying to exert more power in the front office, which, by the way, he probably should have. Right. I just don't know. I don't think you can divorce on-field from off-field, and I don't know if you can separate the locker room from the field, because I just don't know. I mean, I do think in a playoff situation, especially a team like Tampa Bay, where things are going to probably go pretty deep, I do think chemistry tends to matter. And I just don't know how, if you play out, kind of the Doctor Strange 1 billion simulations thing, I don't know how often Antonio Brown screwing up off the field and getting cut can cost them a couple of weeks of focus. I just don't, maybe I've actually heard the theory that teams are more equipped to deal with distractions, quote unquote, media distractions this year, because reporters aren't in the locker room. And they're not going to, go up to Mike Evans and get his candid thoughts on this sort of thing, or go up to Chris Godwin or go up to Scotty Miller. So these guys are doing Zoom. They're not talking one-on-one with reporters, so it's a little bit different. So if there was some discontentment, maybe it doesn't leak out as much. So I think that it is one of the most complicated situations I can remember as far as just a mid-season acquisition in the last 3, 4, or 5 years. And I agree with you in the sense that maybe there's no downside from a football standpoint. I just don't know how much of I don't know. I hate distraction culture, and I don't think it's very real. But I do think that someone like Antonio Brown, who has derailed a couple of situations in the past, I think there's the real possibility it could happen here too.
Outstanding. So let's go from one distraction receiver to another one and see if you buy into this idea that the Browns and Baker Mayfield are better off without Odell Beckham. So
I tend to always think that talent is better than not having talent. Okay. I think that if there's a viewing theory type of situation with a receiver in the NFL, it's usually the fault of the quarterback or the play caller or something like that, where they're trying to force the ball, or they're trying to they're trying to run a system that just gets the guy the ball instead of figuring out where the ball should go, all that stuff. I've seen those comments about maybe he's going to play better without trying to worry about where Beckham is in the field. I just think if you're concerned about that, you were concerned in general with the wrong things. And if there's some sort of psychic relief that Beckham is out, that's probably says something about maybe the quarterback in the system. So I think this is a loss. I think the Browns are still a pretty good team. I think that having Beckham would have been more beneficial than not having Beckham. So I don't know. I'm more curious what you guys think. Is there something real there when you have a number one receiver and he goes out, that there could be some benefit in the long run?
Yeah, I've kind of tread both lines or both sides of this line. Earlier in the offseason, I was saying that it could be something for Deshaun Watson, right? You lose Nuke Hopkins and you actually become a better quarterback overall, because you don't have the crutch. You have to actually play honest on every single snap. And with Baker Mayfield in particular, I think there might be something to it, because he isn't doing well in the mental side of this, in terms of consistently going through reads, in terms of, functionally reading a defense every single snap. He's zeroing in on where he wants to go with the ball and firing it at that guy like a laser, and
100 miles an hour every time.
And just trying to hit a bullseye. And he can do that, but it means that he's locked into wherever he's decided to go with the football. And if you have a guy like Odell Beckham there, you're probably going to lock in on him more often than you would if it was just Rashad Higgins or whoever else the receiver will be, right? So I think for him, there might be something to him not being in the lineup and having to, at least be more honest with where you're going with the ball.
Yeah, I also think that system, too. You got the Kubiak system, the Shanahan, Kubiak, that whole tree. You see what Shanahan's doing with the Niners. Like, does he want talented players? Yes, but it's a whole bunch of talented players that you put in, you scheme them into space and all that stuff. At the same time, the Vikings, had Stephon Diggs and they had Adam Thielen. Like, you need guys who can win too. But I do think there's a certain reliance on the system. They create plays for tight ends every single week. They create plays for all of the receivers to get open every single week. So they're less reliant, I'd say, on a number one. It is interesting, though. Baker has played so much better from his rookie season to just that little snippet last week without Odell Beckham. But I don't know that that's going to completely continue, but it could actually help his development, maybe being less reliant on one guy.
So we don't know is the answer.
Nobody knows. I mean, nobody really knows. It's all small sample size stuff. But good job with the Ewing theory, and hat tip to your boss for that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question for you because you've written a lot of stuff through the years. My colleague Sam here he's one of the many that has written Tom Brady off in his career.
Yeah, that happened
back in 2014.
Good thing is I did it so long ago that people are starting to forget.
Oh yeah, I mean you already went on your apology tour.
Right.
Like, that's so long
half
ago.
A decade ago. It's perfect.
The apologies are done. So, Kevin, have you ever written Tom Brady off? Are you one of those writers?
No. So I was lucky in so much that I worked for the Wall Street Journal in 2014 when most of the writing off was happening. And we didn't really do takes back then. A lot of feature stories, a lot of big picture pieces, but nothing. There was no avenue for me to be like, the Patriots are totally done, okay? And Tom Brady's totally done. And so by the time I started to do more analysis and takes, the whole Tom Brady is done thing became such a meta narrative that every time, by 2016, 2017, 2018, every time he played a bad game, everybody was so afraid to say it because of people like Sam or people like Trent Dilfer who went out on a limb and said this wasn't going to work, and then they just got old take exposed into the ground. And I think that now it's almost like you have to joke about it. It's almost like the exact opposite of the Josh Allen thing, where the only actual posture to take is to be so jokey about how good he is that you can play all sides. That's the Tom Brady decline narrative. And I've been hesitant to the entire time to say anything declarative about it because this is a guy who's constantly reinvented himself. I went back a couple years ago and just looked at how Brady was perceived in media the last 20 years. And it was amazing to read like Bob Ryan's column off of the first Rams Super Bowl. And he's saying, Brady's going to paper cut you to death. And, he's a game manager and all this stuff. And you think 6 years later, he's running the 2007 Patriots offense with Welker and Moss, and it's just totally different. And I tend to think whenever Tom Brady's in a rut that he will reinvent himself in a way that makes him relevant to the team he's on and the time he's playing in. And so I've always given him the benefit of the doubt, and I will. It would be a long time until I write him off.
He's also reached the point now where he's so far past the point that a regular human declines that it's pointless even trying to anticipate it, right? Like when you're in your mid to late 30s, it's when you start expecting quarterbacks to start to fall off that cliff. So any first sign that that's happening, you jump all over and you're like, well, the guy's declining. It's the beginning of the end. Now it's like, well, it's 7 years after the beginning of the end should have happened. So let's just see whenever it eventually falls off. Now that the Brady and Belichick have divorced and gone their separate ways, everybody's focusing on this like credit tracker, right? Who was most responsible for the dynasty and who will come out of the next few years of independence, however long they last, looking better. Where do you stand on both those things? At the time of divorce, who deserves more credit? I can't
believe we're actually talking about this.
And then after everything's said and done, when they've had a chance to independently burnish their legacies, who comes out better?
You got to know right now, week 7, 2020. We need to know.
I don't think, and I read the Tom Curran column where he did a great job breaking this down, and I don't think that you can do it exactly. And I don't think anything going forward is going to change what happened in the past. And I know that seems kind of cold takey, but what I mean is that, if you look at Jurassic Park and you say, this is a great movie, was it Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, or Steven Spielberg? And then you just go, well, Jeff Goldblum was in Thor, so credit. There's one for Jeff Goldblum on the who deserves credit for Jurassic Park thing. I mean, like, a great team is everybody working together, okay? And I don't think you could tell the story of Tom Brady without Bill Belichick and vice versa. And I don't think we can ever find out. Everyone talks about the 2008 team with Matt Castle, or the first 4 games of the Deflategate suspension, where he's throwing Bill O'Brien's Texans team in a trash can with Jacoby Brissett. I don't think that really tells us much. Ryan Russillo has talked a lot about how easy the 08 schedule was and how many bad teams that they got wins over and all that stuff. And so I think that it's just that conversation eats itself after a while. And I just think it's unknowable. And there's so many things with, the 07 offense that we talked about, that doesn't happen unless they get Wes Welker and reimagine everything. And Josh McDaniels goes down and meets with Dan Mullen and Urban Meyer in Florida and figures out how to run that offense. And then Tom Brady takes advantage of it. So I think that they're just so linked that it's an unknowable question. And I don't think we're going to find out anything this year. And even if this Patriots team goes 5-11 and Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl this year in Tampa, I don't think you can just go and retroactively ascribe credit for the Seahawks Super Bowl, right? I just don't think that that's how this works. And so Tom Brady's going to win this post breakup race here, because the Bucs are awesome and the Patriots are going to be a pretty bad team this year, and they don't have a good roster, and Cam Newton can't throw to his right and has all these mechanical problems, and the receivers can't get open. But I don't think anything that happens now can retroactively be assigned to who was more responsible for things in the past.
Lukewarm takes appreciated here. Nuanced takes are appreciated. I can't even believe we asked the question, Sam. I said before the season we're not going to do it. I said we're not going to be the people that we're 7 weeks in. Let's, Kev, you said, you're
a professional fence sitter amongst the two of us. Applauds the fence sitter.
My official answer is maybe. Yeah. Just maybe. Yeah. I was going to refer to Tom Curran's breakdown too, which was great. He basically said you have to give credit to Belichick for the first 10 years for essentially developing Tom Brady, like fostering the atmosphere for him to grow. And then maybe the next 10 years, it was more Tom Brady's team. And I looked at it as like, well, when you have Brady out there or Breeze or whoever, you have a baseline of wins. Like you're going to stumble into 8 if you have a high school team. And then beyond that, Belichick makes it better and the defense makes it better or whatever it is, right? So, right in the middle. But don't like week 2, people were overreacting the other way. Brady threw like a pick 6 and had a bad game statistically against the Panthers, and Cam threw for 400, and people were going the other way with it.
I'm not saying like now, 7 weeks in, based off the first 7 weeks of the season, who are we ascribing? I'm saying that.
Predict.
20 years time, these guys are going to have had X number of years post time together. Who is going to have burnished their legacy more? Belichick with the however many years he's going to coach minus Brady, or Brady with God knows how many years he's still going to keep playing until his arm falls off.
What if Tom Brady's arm falls off next year because he's 44? Do we then view as a failure?
No, right now you're looking at Brady play and you're saying, how much longer can he go on? Because I'm not even seeing real signs of any kind of decline. So if he plays like another 3-4 years, takes them to a couple of more Super Bowls, I would say that has to enhance his legacy independent of Belichick.
I think he's been playing with house money for a couple of years now, right? He's just adding to it. And then, Breeze is going to retire next year. Brady's going to keep going and break every record too, just for fun. I think that's the reality.
I think he's kind of in a no-lose situation, right? Even if he stank and fell off a cliff and then it's like, well, he just got old and he's done. Okay, he's 43. Of course that was going to happen. But if he goes on a run of like 3-4 more years minus Bill and wins rings, I don't see how that couldn't enhance his overall reputation.
Right. So let me ask you a question. Historically, when you look at Joe Montana's career, do you downgrade his accomplishments because of the success of Steve Young and his lack of a Super Bowl in Kansas City after he left?
No, because I think that the Kansas City year helped. Because he went to Kansas City and showed that even with like nothing left, broken down body, he was still able to outduel John Elway and outduel Steve Young in week 3 or whatever it was, and get the Chiefs to a playoff run and almost get there. Like he didn't win the ring, but he at least showed that there was still some Montana magic even right at the death.
No, I agree too. That's the thing too. Like nobody's downgrading Montana for having Bill Walsh as his coach, right? They're always linked. He did win the one with George Seifert as the head coach, but it's the same environment. It's the same team. Right. Nobody's really downgrading Montana for Jerry Rice, even though Rice went on to continue to be awesome. So they always have to be linked. It's football. It's a team game. Let's talk some Seahawks here. You tweeted, when was this tweet about the Seahawks never play a a normal game?
It was last November.
Yeah,
and
it pops up like every week now.
We're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of it. I want to say it was when they were playing the Niners last year. Let me check this out here. Yeah, it was at Niners. It was a 27-24 overtime game.
Is this your best tweet of all time? This is a personal question, but somebody's going to ask it.
It's the one that gets the most heat week after week, and it's the one that's the most applicable. And I think that I don't really remember sending it. I remember kind of the reaction to it, and I remember the week following or 2 weeks after that it would just kept getting recirculated every single week, and then I started to realize that that Seahawks fans, I had tapped into a sort of anxiety that Seahawks fans have. And everybody then was sharing their story about, some crazy Seahawks game they remember and stuff like that. So, from a creativity standpoint, probably not my best tweet, but from a test of time, absolutely.
So, Kev, you're like an actual journalist. We're just a couple of jackasses sitting in chairs who talk to people every now and again. So we don't know what we're doing. But when we have guests on, I like to make a little bit of an effort and do a little bit of research, right? And obviously that means Googling. So when I Google Steve or me, we have relatively uncommon names, so we're the only people that pop up. When I Google...
Plus I'm famous.
Well, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah. When I Google Kevin Clark, it turns out there's a few of them, and that causes problems. But I was fascinated by the group of people that came up as Kevin Clarks. And I'm really intrigued by your take as to which one of these people you most wish you were. So, potential Kevin Clarks that you could be. There is a Kevin Randall Clark, who is a former professional American football defensive back and return specialist who played 4 seasons for the Denver Broncos in the NFL. So that's a pretty good baseline, right?
It's a good one.
After that, there's also a basketball coach and a hockey player, but they were sufficiently low level that I wasn't going to dive into their.
It was the coach at St. John's University.
There you go.
Not a bad job for him.
So you can also have them, since you know about them. There is also the guy that played Freddie the drummer from School of Rock. I get an Instagram DM about once every 6 months asking if I'm him. There you go. And he's apparently now an actual rock drummer, an aspiring, superstar musician. Apparently hasn't quite broken through yet, but he's on the cusp. He's grinding. He's working his way. Our third Kevin Clark, this one might be my favorite, is an American poet and critic, author of the poetry collections In the Evening of No Warning and Self-Portrait with Expletives. Now, the reason I think this is a good one
for Americans,
whatever. The reason I think this is a good one is this was a line describing this guy in an article I read. With his neatly trimmed mustache and swept back hair, Kevin Clark looks like a retired major league ball player or maybe a retired fire chief.
You could be that.
Wow.
I think that's a pretty good one, right?
How do we know this isn't me?
If you hadn't shaved the mustache, this could be you.
Wait, are you a part-time poet as well? I
could be. I'm actually. I would. Are there any more Kevin Clarks?
I got one more for you. There's a Kevin Clark who's a film director whose biggest hits include Paranoid Activity 2,
not 1,
and something called Ghetto Pirates.
A classic.
A true classic. Also, the New Jersey Devils PA announcer is named Kevin Clark.
Oh, there you go.
Maybe that's the simplest job for you.
When I lived in New York, occasionally, if I went to covered a hockey game or covered a basketball game, I would get mistaken for either the PA announcer or just from a credential standpoint or the basketball coach. Okay, so I would if I can't be me in this situation, I would like to be the poet. I'm not very good at poetry. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of your some of the greats, but I don't think that I'm particularly good at putting it down on paper, and so I would like to be better at that. So I would take that guy's skills.
Plus, he's got the mustache and the hair. So
he's got the mustache and the hair.
You're playing with house money at that point.
A retired major league ball player, and that's my dream. To be called a retired.
I'm not even sure what that means. The retired ball player thing. That's really strange.
Apparently, I don't look like that.
You're just a retired minor league ball player.
And I look like that.
Well, I'm looking this up. Okay, this guy. So he's an old man.
Yeah, silver
looks to be in his 70s. I think that
you're going to age well.
He's just an old guy with a mustache. I don't understand why he doesn't look particularly athletic.
Look, they've got to fill some column inches when you're writing about some poet that nobody's heard of. You got to get creative with the language.
Maybe they legitimately found your old picture with the mustache.
And they aged it. When you Google Kevin Clark poet, there's a photo of my wife and I on the fourth line of Google Images. So I don't know.
Google struggles with this stuff.
Maybe they consider me a poet as well. So yeah, no, I'd go with the poet.
All right. I think that's a good call.
Special thanks to Kevin Clark, author of Self-Portrait with Expletives. Thank you for showing up. Real quick, I have to ask, how'd you get Jeff Fisher? How'd you connect with him?
He grew a mustache.
Pull him in.
He was doing so I'd interviewed Fisher a bunch when he was a coach with the Rams, and I actually enjoyed it quite a bit because he's always good with the stories and all that stuff. This was Slow News Day, so week one he was doing FanDuel stuff, and so he was doing the rounds, and we heard about that in like August, and we were sifting through potential week one Slow News Day guests, and some players were available, kind of mid-level players. Our previous guests have been Lamar Jackson, so we didn't want to just kind of mail it in the first week, and so when we found out Fisher was available, we jumped on it. He was amazing, one of our best guests ever, totally up for everything. I mean, I think we did like 45 minutes with him. Like, we could have done a director's cut that interview. He was awesome.
Love it. That's great. I love that you have high standards too. If you need mid-level podcast hosts on Slow News Day or anything,
you did grow the mustache for that though, right? That was the purpose of this. You didn't just randomly.
I'm going to tell a funny story. So I grew the mustache. I had a beard.
Right.
And then I shaved it down to a mustache for the Jeff Fisher interview.
Yes.
And then the bit was going to be I was going to shave it off. And then that was going to happen in the middle of the episode.
Like mid-segment?
The mustache and then not tell anybody. And then I loved the mustache. I loved it. And so I logged on the next day to film
What's wrong with you?
the second part of the show. And all of my producers were like, where's the mustache is still there? Like, what happened to your bit? And I had to explain to them that in the 24 hours since I came up with this idea, that I just fallen in love with this mustache and that it's staying. And everybody hated it, including my wife. And certainly the producers did, except the weird people in the YouTube comments and then like Twitter people. They seem to like it. And so I kept it for an additional 6 weeks.
That's pretty good going.
Had to go.
The wife is always the biggest problem because I have had a mustache for about an hour in my life. Same thing, right? I had this kind of beard. Decided one day that I was shaving the beard off, but obviously once you've got like a full solid beard, you can't go from beard to nothing. You've got to go through some stage of ridiculous facial hair, right? That's part of the thing. So I went to like handlebars to the full sort of old English gentleman thing, and then went to some like full like wax cornered mustache thing. And I was like, I have to keep this for a while. And my wife was like, shave that right now. That is not staying. You cannot leave the house looking like that. So that stays as long as you can leave the house.
Mustaches are addicting. That's what it is. You get attached to them. They're powerful.
Yes. And there's there was a GIF of me that was made where I was just kind of laughing, and so there's a guy on Twitter who responded to me who was like, the energy you give off is always, I know you're looking at my mustache. And I actually think that there's something to that. When you have the mustache, the only energy you're giving off at all times is, I know you're looking at my mustache.
I love it. And November's coming up. We bringing it back?
Yeah, Movember.
Probably not. I mean, who was on a couple weeks ago? It might have been Nina on Slow News Day, where she was basically just like, listen, we're quarantined with one person during this whole thing. Okay. Right. I'm living in, I'm not in Los Angeles right now. The only person I see is my wife, and she hates the mustache. So it's a bold look right now to be like, the one person I see daily hates my facial hair. So that's the risk. And that's why you can't, if once we get back into normal society, the mustache might come back because you're seeing more than one person a day. But when you're 0 for 1 in person for people who like facial hair, that's when it gets to be a risk.
That's true.
Good rules.
I will say that, so it wouldn't be me if I didn't link this back to rugby somehow, way, shape, or form. New Zealand, Antipodeans, New Zealand's and Australian people love a mustache. I kept seeing them, all these rugby players have these giant full mustaches, and I kept assuming it was for like Movember, the same way it is when you see regular humans with a mustache. It's almost always because of that. And they would play autumn internationals in November. So I just assumed that's what it was. But over this summer, I've been watching like their domestic games. They just rock the mustache. Apparently Kiwis and Australians just like mustaches more than, normal people.
They're tough to get rid of.
Sam, I went to a rugby game 2 years ago in South Africa.
Yes.
And
talk to me, Kev.
Listeners are leaving.
The one thing I learned in the middle of the game was that I actually don't know the rules of rugby at all.
Nobody does. It doesn't matter.
I thought I was all in. I was like, I love this. I mean, I got the core tenets of the sport.
Yeah.
And then things would happen. I was just like, you lost me.
The
Sorry.
funny thing is that rugby will change the rules just like almost on the fly. You know, like if football tomorrow just decided that, you know what, we actually don't need the football move for a catch. Just 2 feet, bang, done. If they just like change that week 8, that's the kind of thing that rugby does all the time. So when you think you have it nailed, like I understand what happens at the breakdown, suddenly they'll just like make a decree that actually the rules have changed a little bit. We're tweaking it. Everyone just needs to adapt like from one week to the next. It's kind of madness.
Fascinating sport,
That's
Sam.
amazing. I kind of like that.
Yeah, just keep everyone on their toes, change the rules up.
Yeah, just keep it moving.
Just keeping up with the times here, changing the rules on a weekly basis. Well, Kevin Clark, much appreciated. You the host, the actual host of the Ringer NFL show? Or co-host?
Yeah, co-host.
Owner.
I'm
Co-host.
one of the hosts. I mean, we have a bunch of people on the pod now. They're awesome. Warren Sharp, Joe House, Chris Vernon, Ryan Shazier, who's on with me today or tomorrow's pod. So we're all hosts.
Awesome. Great. Well, go check it out, the Ringer NFL show. Kevin, thank you for your time. Much appreciated, man.
Anytime, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks for that. That was great. Look at you. Your research is just spectacular, man.
We're getting better at this whole interviewing thing. I think, it was a rocky start, but we're getting there.
Yeah, and we admit weakness. Like, hey, we're just new to this. You give that out. I don't know how to do this. I just, Googled your name and some artists came out. And let's discuss.
Yeah.
So, good stuff from Kevin Clark. Go check out the Ringer NFL show in their rotation of great analysts. So, that'll do it, man. Week 8 preview is in the books. Everybody enjoy Thursday Night Football. Enjoy all of the weekend action. And we'll be back here Monday morning recapping every game from Week 8.
Yep.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.